I'm really happy this morning to introduce to everyone Police Chief Ken Charles. Ken lives in Farmington with his lovely wife and his 2 fantastic daughters. They make the paper more than he does. He was hired as, as chief of the Farmington Police in February, and he worked for a few years for Franklin County Sheriff's Department. In 2002 he started that. So he's going to tell you a little bit about himself and then a little bit about what's going on in the town here. And definitely he needs a lot of questions from people or concerns. We're going to put him on the spot today. Let's welcome Ken.
No place for the coffee. Admittedly, I don't exactly have a plan of exactly what I want to talk to you about this morning, but any opportunity to get out in the community and talk to people, I'm really lucky to be here. Actually, so this is my first time coming to a Rotary meeting, so it's the first time I've heard the invocation, and it immediately struck me that, really that's kind of the crux of what we do as law enforcement officers and people that work in public safety. If I could have remembered every word, or I should have written it down, probably I could have said something, that really relates to each point, so I appreciate that, and, I think it's something that I need to keep in mind every day. Actually, incidentally, today I came into the office about 5 o'clock, 5:30, and just to kind of fill you in. I mean, every day in law enforcement, you don't know what it's going to be. Yesterday was one way, today is going to be a different, tomorrow's going to be something totally different. It was a little more relaxed coming in yesterday. Today, within the hour that I was sitting in the office, we had a person, not homeless, but, an older gentleman with some mental health needs, and a pleasant gentleman, and he does have a home, but for some reason he feels like he can't go back there. So trying to find that balance between helping him and getting him where he needs to go, and trying to identify those needs, with somebody who doesn't recognize that they have a need, and it's just not very cut and dried, Almost as soon as we dealt with him, another call came in. As I was on my way over here, there was another gentleman from Lewiston, approximately 55 years old, and he had found a sweet spot, over along the roadside to take a nap, and he was just resting. Well, what do you do with a person like that? They're just kind of passing through, and we end up having to deal with things that no one else really seems to have a role in dealing with. And as soon as that one was done, a third call. This is all within the last hour. I didn't know that I was going to be here, and I was struggling to think, well, how am I going to get in touch with Sharon to let her know that I'm going to be either late or just can't show up? Same thing happens sometimes around dinner time, and that's the frustrating part of being a law enforcement officer's wife. When she has something on the table and ready to go, and where's Ken? Where is he? So, anyway, just to kind of give you a sense of what it's like to be to be a cop in a small town. You just really never know what you're going to run into, and sometimes it's hard and fast. Sometimes it's smooth and slow. You really just don't know what you're going to run into. So, if you could just humor me, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I actually grew up in Waterville, graduated from high school there, 1988. I'm probably lucky that I did graduate. I wasn't the best student. I think I had far more ability than I ever applied myself in school. So I knew I wasn't ready for college, but I knew college was something that I wanted to and needed to do. So what does someone do? I joined the military. Figured if I'm not ready to go, I can at least start saving some money to go. And served a few years on active duty in the Army. I was stationed in Germany, which was kind of an exciting time because, of course, it was at the end of the Cold War. I was there when the Berlin Wall came. I wasn't in Berlin, I was near Munich, but I was there when the wall came down. What a piece of history, what a time to be there. Of course, that was about the same time that Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. So they figured now with the Eastern Bloc breaking up, less need for us there. So they sent us to the Persian Gulf, where for Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Well, that was a pretty quick trip, and it was getting to be the end of my active duty tour of service, and it was time to come home. And the early 90s were a tough time, kind of like similar but different to now. Not a lot of employment opportunity, and so I did a few things and decided pretty quickly, this is my time. Let's start. I can actually make money by going to college, so I applied to the University of Maine at Farmington, and started to use my GI Bill, and graduated a few years later. Did much better than I did in high school, and earned myself a very valuable degree in community health education. So essentially public health, which you wouldn't think was necessarily a good stepping stone toward a career in law enforcement, but actually it gave me a lot of skills and a lot of perspective that I think made me a more effective police officer, and led directly to this new position as chief and kind of leader of the department. So having graduated from University of Maine at Farmington, Tracy Hardy from the Healthy Community Coalition felt well enough of me to take me on, and I developed the mobile health unit program that's actually still running now, 25, 28 years later. So that took some public health services, education, screenings, all kinds of different opportunities, and got it out into the communities, outside of Farmington, trying to expand the network a little bit. So, having done that, Rick Batt apparently liked what I was doing way back then, and asked me if I could come on as an interim, working as a department manager at the hospital. And I was in charge of quality assurance, performance improvement, which became a position in medical information as the director. And this was at the time when they were transitioning from a paper record to an electronic record. HIPAA, Privacy Act stuff was just coming into place, and that fell directly under my responsibilities in medical records. And that was all fine and good, and I really gathered a lot of really great experience. I think, I like to think that my time in that position, kind of transitioned to, a department that had been kind of moved around a lot. Morale was sort of an issue, and was operating a lot more organized, and was operating in a more collaborative manner in and out of the department. But September 11th came along. That was almost 20 years now. 20 years. And I remember sitting there in my office, and people are coming and going, and I'm facilitating different projects, and people are coming and going, and I just thought to myself, is this where I want to be in 20 or 30 years? It's a great job, and I don't have any regrets, but I could sense that it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So Mr. Batt was, again, very supportive of me, and he gave me the opportunity to kind of do some soul searching and some assessments to figure out where are my strengths, and lo and behold, the thing that kept popping up was actually law enforcement. So why didn't I go into law enforcement before? My dad was a retired detective from the town of Waterville. My older brother was working as an officer in Roanoke, Virginia. My younger brother was working for the Sheriff's Department here in Franklin County. I just kind of felt like I was supposed to go somewhere else and do something totally different. I must have a different path. So there was an opportunity to be hired at the Sheriff's Department. So I took that opportunity, and no looking back. It was the best decision I made. So when I went to the police academy, though, there I was, 32 years old, probably 10 or 12 years older than many of the other members of the class. And, I did quite well. Again, I think I finally found my niche. Some people have a harder time finding that. That's how I ended up there. So I worked at the Sheriff's Department and for going, about 18, just over 18 years. It would have been great if right at the beginning I should have been able to go right to the police academy, but I remember there was that one day when I put my uniform on, and I was getting ready, I was walking out the door, and really, even at that point, we didn't have cell phones in our pockets. It was a bag phone sitting on the seat of the cruiser. But I got a phone call on my landline at home, and I had joined the National Guard, and way back when I had started my education at UMF. Anyway, that was the call saying, we need you to come in because our unit's being activated. Now they want to do something in Iraq. So I then put my career on hold again for 16 months, where I went to Iraq, and I was a flight medic on Black Hawk helicopters and transported friendlies, enemies, children, geriatric patients. I mean, really just running the gamut of providing health care. I never mentioned that I worked for a Delta ambulance and Lifestar along the way. It made a great part-time job while I was in school. But anyway, again, just more experience and more opportunity, and came back. My poor wife, we had a toddler, and we had an infant, and she was working full-time, and nonetheless, there goes Ken, off again, 18 weeks at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy. So it was quite a challenge for her, but she stayed with me and was supportive. It takes a pretty special person to put up with all that I've put her through. So anyway, that's kind of how I ended up in law enforcement, and it's a non-traditional path, but I think, again, it gives you made me a much more well-rounded officer, I think, as I developed. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about where I came from, but most important to me right now is where I am. Chief of a 14-person department, 14 sworn officers. At least I wish we had that many. The challenge that's striking law enforcement in the state of Maine right now is that, just like probably all of you as business owners and employees and doing the things you do, in education right now, I think the number I heard was it 60 or 70 openings in SAD 9 right now. Unbelievable. I don't know where the employees or the potential employees are, but boy, we're all struggling, aren't we? So we're allotted 14 sworn officers, and right now we only have 9. So that's a pretty remarkable position. The department has had its ebbs and flows over the years, where they go from full staff to a few people down, and we're definitely in that position now. So I should have brought some applications if anybody's interested in a career change, but I didn't. But we can certainly set you up with one. So anyway, even if we're able to fill those positions today, I want to tell you a little bit about what it takes to become a police officer. Of course, there are minimum age standards. You got to be at least either 20 years old with 2 years of education, post high school education, or you have to be 21 years old and then go through the hiring process. That's pretty young and pretty inexperienced. You don't know it when you're that age, but boy, don't we all look back and go, boy, if I knew then what I know now. So the first step, of course, is dropping that application and providing a resume and a cover letter and putting your best foot forward. You get to meet with the chief. You get to meet with an interview hiring board, usually four members, usually 2 people that are senior in the department, and maybe a community member. We try to be kind of diverse in who's talking to and evaluating these candidates. If you make it through that, then the next step is you've got to take what's called the alert test, which is a standardized test similar to SATs or ACTs, where you go to the academy, take the test, and basically just evaluating basic writing, reading, grammar skills, those types of things. While you're there, you go to the gym area where you have to take a physical fitness test, and it's only like 14 minutes of work. The basic the minimum standard being, as many push-ups as you can do in 1 minute, as many sit-ups as you can do in a minute, and then get on the track and run a mile and a half. So it doesn't sound terrible for some, but when you lump it all together, it can be quite a challenge. So these are just hurdles you got to get over. And once you have that physical fitness test, then boy, we jump right in and we ask you, I think it's about a 20-page questionnaire, trying to learn as much as we can about you, where your background is, what have you been doing, who are your references, and then we assign an investigator, an actual officer or a detective, to then verify all that information and go out into the community and find out as much as we can about you and determine, you may not have wanted to tell us about something, but someone else is probably going to be able to give up the ghost, and we can learn a lot about a person. But then to take it yet another step further, every officer in the state of Maine has to undergo a polygraph examination, because obviously we want people who are have the highest levels of integrity, honesty, fairness. So that's just another tool, and it's very, what's the word, invasive, and it's very unique. Until you've sat through one, you really just don't know what it's like. But again, it's the goal of just having people that are just of the highest caliber in personality and in integrity. You leave there, the next step is a psychological examination, and that's a process that takes anywhere from 4 to 8 hours with a psychiatrist. And boy, when I get that report back, it's a remarkable tool for learning a lot about not just how who a person is, but how they operate, how they think. Are they going to be a risky person to put into certain situations, or what are they going to be like? And then, of course, there's a physical exam where they go and get poked and prodded and make sure that they can withstand the rigors of the police academy and police work. Boy, sound fun already? Again, those applications, I can give you some cards, we can get those out there. And then, of course, with all that being said, then the next step would be to attend an 18-week basic police academy. And what does that entail? That's at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy in Vassalboro. Of course, it was I believe it was a girls' school when I was in high school in Waterville. And but now it's this beautiful setting up overlooking the Kennebec River in Vassalboro. But boy, when you get close to that building, during academy time, the walls will shake. Where are my veterans here? We have some veterans. Remember basic training? Very similar to basic training, but I think a lot better organized with a much better plan. So you go there. The officers get there Monday morning, and they don't leave. They live in essentially a dorm type setting until Friday evening. And during that time, they may only be paid 8 hours a day, but they're actually operating and accountable for anywhere from 16 to 18 hours of that day. Classwork, exercise, defensive tactics, that kung fu stuff that we're supposed to know, mechanics of arrest, restraint, and control, firearms, driving, all these basic skills, how to interview people, learning about constitutional law, Maine law, federal law as it relates to law enforcement in Maine. I could just go on and on. Coursework in crisis intervention, so learning about mental health and people with mental health problems and challenges and how it relates to the job they're going to be doing at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. Yeah, so really it's a pretty it's a well-organized program. It packs a ton of information into a short period of time, and again, not everyone that attends the police academy ends up finishing. So can you see that we really invest? I mean, I think the number could be estimated around $40,000 to select, orient, train someone just to then hit the road and fall under the auspices of what's called a field training officer, where they're kind of showing the ropes as to how it works here in your local community, and that lasts about 10 weeks. So yeah, quite a bit. It's quite a bit going on there. So again, when I come back to the fact that we have 9 or 10 positions filled out of 14, there are no quick and easy fixes, to staffing. So right now we're lucky when we always have a person on 24/7. The ideal for officer safety and for ability to manage multiple things going on at one time, really we ought to have two or more if we can. So we're short, but we're hanging in there. So when you see our guys, out on the road, I'd love to see them out more walking up and down, through Broadway and downtown. But they're really kind of going from call to call. There's not a lot of downtime. So it's been a little bit trickier getting them, having them being able to manage their time such that they can do more proactive work. Again, whether it's just connecting with a person downtown, or spending that much more time working with a family in crisis, or responding to crime. I know some of you have had some police needs in the last few weeks. So we try to work together and kind of communicate and share expertise and deal with stuff. Let me take a break for a minute. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts at this point? Yes, sir?
Do you and your team feel respected here in the community?
That's a really good question. I think we're really lucky. One of the challenges of being in law enforcement, and especially in the last year, is obviously a lot of the negative attention that's resulted because of things that have happened, hundreds and thousands of miles away. My deepest feeling is that, yes, we do feel supported and respected. I think we have a really good community. I think they're receptive to what we're doing. No one usually likes seeing the officer show up at their doorstep if there's a problem, unless they're the one that called. But yes, I feel like we're very respected and appreciated. Probably more than others. Recently, in the last several weeks, on so many occasions, someone has come up to me and said, "Hey, thank you for what you do. You guys don't hear it enough." And yeah, maybe we don't. But then who does? Are the nurses at the hospital hearing what they need to, or even custodial staff? Probably not. So while it's appreciated, it's not necessarily expected, but it does mean a lot to hear. Yes, sir.
Chief, you touched on it a couple of times. Crisis intervention and social services. The other night, you introduced a new officer to Board of Selectmen. And you mentioned the background. In fact, the other guy that's coming on too. How is that segued in the police department, that aspect in terms of service to the community? Why is that moving up the scale?
Well, I think it's because Farmington's had a long history of actually having a very extra selective process. While it's tempting to take the low-hanging fruit and just slap and give somebody a badge, those days are gone. And we'd rather work short-handed but have quality people than to have low-quality people but full numbers. So what he's referring to is we have a new officer just started with. He's from Rhode Island, graduated from the University of Rhode Island with a bachelor's in sociology and a minor in criminology. So that's a pretty good education background for what we do, obviously. But important too is that he worked for about a year and a half, 2 years as a direct support professional working in a home with people with very advanced or very challenging mental health needs, people with extreme bipolar, schizophrenia. So here's a kid who comes on already having experience in recognizing behavioral health issues and being able to de-escalate situations and kind of work with people on a day-to-day basis. So now, you know, with him having gone through our process, he'll be going to the police academy. He's going to hit the road and be, you know, that much farther ahead. Those are the types of people that we want to, you know, that we want to find. But again, you know, over the years, I mean, I think the number is about 60 personnel have come and gone from Farmington Police Department alone. Some people just get into it, they decide this isn't for me. Some people get into it and we decide this isn't for you. You know, so, and then some people just, they get into it and they decide there's bigger, better opportunity. We lose a lot of people because we're so selective, we get the best of the best. Well, the state police love to get the best of the best too. So, you know, sometimes it's tempting to go. Some people want, you know, a faster moving department. You know, go work in Lewiston for, you know, for a couple of weeks. You're going to have a different experience than you're going to have working here in Farmington. So it depends on what it is that drives people and where their motivation lies. But having said that, so, you know, we have this, you know, somewhere 10 to 14 people on at least that we're budgeted for, sometimes full, sometimes not. But having had 60 people come and go, well, there's a very small row of photographs in our lobby showing the people who've actually made it through for a full, you know, 20, 25, 30, whatever, you know, making their way through the career and making it to retirement. So that's a challenge. So you really got to kind of dig in and find, you know, what is it that motivates people? What is it that makes them feel like they're productive? And that's one of my big challenges, you know, because obviously one thing is to recruit, another is to retain, and that's a challenge, especially in small towns. Hi, Lisa.
Can you speak to the opioid issue or
Yeah.
substance use disorder, what you're seeing?
Yeah. The substance abuse issue has changed a lot over the, you know, the time that I've been an officer. You know, I would say, you know, again, toward the beginning, you know, diversion of prescription narcotics was such a huge issue, it's changed a lot. It's still an issue, again, the diversion and misuse of prescription narcotics, but obviously the thing that we're dealing with most right now is heroin, fentanyl, that's the big thing. It's been really interesting to, you know, the things that a cop knows are different than what the general public knows, much less people who are dealing with those issues. But yeah, right now it's, you know, that's the tough one. I would say, of course, you know, you read all the time about overdosing in communities. And one of the great things that's happened is that we've pushed Narcan out into the communities. It's much easier for people to have access to, so it's preventing those overdoses. But it's harder for officers to know a lot of what's going on, because what used to be someone would call 911 because someone was in the throes of an overdose, and we'd show up and we'd have the Narcan. Well, now I don't think we're knowing about what's happening quite as much, if that makes sense. You know, we're definitely not getting the calls that we used to respond to that issue. Over the last few months, the Western Maine actually, I think it was going on a year ago, Western Maine Behavioral Health received some grant funding from the state to develop the what's called Options, which is an opioid response program that partners with law enforcement. So Rebecca Mitchell is our assigned liaison. The idea is that she's able to ride along with officers, and say we do respond to an overdose call, while there's a certain, you know, stigma or, you know, how are the police going to deal with this situation? We can leave Rebecca with them to give them access to, again, more naloxone or Narcan to deal with an overdose, but most importantly, connect them with services, you know, so that they can either get medically assisted treatment, counseling, and just keep hammering that message, giving them opportunity. No one's ready at the same time as the next person to take that next step towards sobriety. And so I think that's the role of law enforcement now, is really kind of changing the way that we look at the drug problem and how we deal with people who are addicted. But at the same time, it is still against the law for good reason, and being able to investigate and stop that supply part of the problem. Does that help? Let's see. What else? Yeah.
So, when you were in Germany, how'd you like Oktoberfest?
As much as anyone else that was in Germany. Yeah. Nope, that was definitely quite an experience for sure. To be honest, I only made it to an actual Oktoberfest one time. Yeah.
Have you heard of a program called Shop with a Cop?
Shop with a Cop?
Yeah.
I think I've seen it around. Maybe you could tell me a little more about it.
So I was supporting part of it in Maple Valley, Washington State before I moved here. And basically what they do is the Rotary or some other groups would get together and would give the police force some money to go and shop with kids just prior to Christmas. Typically it'd be held at like a Walmart, and they give $50 to $100 to a kid, and the police officer would walk the child around and let them buy whatever in the store. You know, so it would be up to the police to pick out the disadvantaged children that would be, you know, most that they'd want to get connected up with in the community.
Well, and then the residual effect of a program like that being, here's a positive connection and opportunity, and then it helps develop a relationship moving forward.
I was wondering,
we would certainly be receptive to participating in a program like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Speaking of programs, is the Citizen Police Academy on the radar?
I hope so. The biggest stumbling block we have right now is stabilizing the staffing issue. I really think it'd be a big eye opener for a lot of people, and I hope sooner than later that we'd be able to institute that again. Yeah, and we have a really great facility. If you've ever been to the what used to be Farmington Family Practice down on Franklin Avenue, of course that was donated to the town, and really makes an outstanding facility for a police agency. So when you were asking about feeling of respect or support in the community, we've got one of the best police departments in for this size town in the state of Maine. I feel like we have an outstanding training area that has some pretty advanced technology for doing situational use of force training. How do you react to particular situations? You get the movie playing in the background, and the officer has to interact with them, and depending on how they do, good or bad, a person operating the system can either make it go one way or the other, and then they've got to work their way through. So it gives them tools in their belt, so to speak, as to how to deal with situations out on the road. Anyway, if anybody's ever interested, COVID compliant or restrictions, considered, we'd certainly welcome people to come down and take a look around the department.
Besides not speeding, is there anything we can do for you?
I think just, don't hesitate when you see the officers out and about, again, they do tend to be a bit of a younger group, and, we want to work on communication skills and communicating with the public. Don't hesitate to go to them. Don't wait for them to necessarily come to you. I encourage them to do the same thing, you know, and don't hesitate to ask questions and to express what you feel like are issues in the community. What we think might be an issue might be different from what you feel is an issue. So I think that'd be helpful. Just being aware, you know, knowing what it takes to become an officer, and, you know, being mindful. Again, a lot of the things, you know, the invocation again, you know, about, you know, is this the biggest thing going on right now, and what can I do about it? You know, that's a really good thing to live by, I think. You know, and ultimately you don't need to be told. You're here, you're part of a service organization, you're donating your time. You know, but being involved in the community and really being aware and thinking about things from other people's perspective. Yep. So keep role modeling the way that you already do. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Welcome.
And we really appreciate your coming in and doing
Thank you.
this.
You have some business to do now?
Yes, a little bit of business. You're welcome to stay and join us, or if you need to duck out, we
That was
totally
my phone that should have
understand.
been turned off, so I'm kind of wondering what that's all about.
I heard that.